Okay, I'm Stan Kingma, and owner of the Kingma Agency, and we started here in Roanoke about 25 years ago. Um, the intent was never to put together an advertising agency. It was to have a viable business that made money, and we were doing multiple things. My background is in music, event production, engineering. I'm a writer, a photographer, kind of, I don't know what I want to do kind of a guy. And we moved here because I had just left a job in New Jersey where I was vice president of marketing for a 3,000 firm, employee firm. And my observation there was that I could not find an ad agency in the greater Philadelphia area that understood the needs of manufacturers and business-to-business marketing. They were all far too clever, far too cute, far too gimmicky. So in the back of my mind, I thought there's got to be a market for this. So when I moved the family to Roanoke, we were doing music productions, touring Europe with musical groups that I was directing and my wife was promoting. And we began picking up industrial clients, and it just kept growing. My son, Joey Kingma, was my first creative guy, and he's now gone on and done well at Medico in the area. And it just sort of evolved.
Cool. What do you like about advertising? I know that's such a broad question, but I kind of want to get right into, you know, what makes it interesting to you? You kind of hit on it a little bit.
What I like about advertising is that it is an extremely diverse, creative field. It's not narrow. When I was in music, I was surrounded by very narrowly focused musicians who could compose or write or play an oboe or play the keyboard or sing. And my skill in music was that I wasn't good at anything, and I was able to pull together the pieces that other people would bring that were musicians. And I feel the very same thing about advertising. I am not a graphic artist, I am not a videographer, I'm not any of these things. But it's such interesting work to pull together creative people, put them in the same room, light the spark, watch how all this evolves. And then I think the job of the manager or the owner or the person that's running this group, whatever you want to call it, is to have good taste and to say, okay, what are we going to do with this mess that's coming out of this? And what does the client want us to do with this mess that's coming out of this? Are we trying to sell a product, create an image? What are we trying to do? What a fascinating way to go through life, you know? That's not bad.
Give me an example of a time when you, a specific project or a campaign that you worked on where you kind of put that group together and kind of watched it blossom, just like you just said, but where the end result was something that you know, people saw and really just that you can look back on and be like, wow, we really knocked it out of the park on that one, or that was a fun one, or that one was maybe the opposite. It was a complete disaster, but it ended up being, you know, a famous campaign or whatever.
Okay, well, in looking at campaigns or projects where we feel like this diverse group of people kind of knocked it out of the park, a couple come to mind. One is that I got a lead out in Scottsdale, Arizona, that a company was looking to do some national marketing. So I just got on a plane and went out and had an interview with this guy and said, look, I can save you money. We live in Roanoke. We've got a very creative group. Showed him pictures of our office and our staff and said, you know, I'll save you money and I'll give you everything you can get out here in Arizona. So we began working for a company called Verilice, and we did a national campaign. And we had, you know, half a dozen people working on it for about a year, maybe two. And it worked very well for them. Everybody was happy. And then Verilice got sold, and so there went that client. But it was just an engaging time where there was enough money in the budget, we could be creative, nobody was counting the pennies so tightly, and everybody was excited. Wow, we got this client in Scottsdale. And we were very excited because we got to go to Scottsdale all the time, so that wasn't bad. So that one comes to mind. The other one that comes to mind is a long-standing relationship we had with Ingersoll Rand. We did the majority of their marketing materials for practically all of their various divisions and product lines for many years. And it was just fun doing that because it was a very complicated product. It was a boring product, and it was hard to find graphic artists who could get excited about rock drills, but we did. And there's a lot of exciting things going on in rock drills. And if rock drills don't get sold, oil doesn't come out of the ground. And if oil doesn't come out of the ground, we got a problem. So it was fun to watch that come about.
You hit on a little bit about, counting every penny and all that. We've definitely picked up how the industry has changed through these interviews. We've picked up how the industry has changed over the years. Let's talk about that a little bit. You've obviously seen things change a little bit, budgets, how people handle budgets, and the level of creativity.
Well, when you ask how the industry's changed and you ask about budgets and the level of creativity and that kind of thing, I think it's much, much deeper than that. I think practically none of us keeps the perspective in mind of how much our industry has changed. It has been huge. 25 years ago, I think we were the only people that I knew of that were relying totally on Macintosh computers for our graphic output. There was still Rubylith and all the basics that we all grew up with. Look at what has happened to our industry. I mean, the internet wasn't even there. Cell phones, I had a bag phone, if anything. You look at the equipment that we used. I had a mechanical typewriter still, an electric typewriter, for heaven's sakes. The communications, the products, newspapers were vital, and look what's happening today. I often try to explain to people that we're in a revolutionary time in communications, and it's much deeper than just how budgets have changed and how people have changed. The younger people don't realize that they are creating a whole new way of communicating. Gutenberg in the middle 1400s didn't realize that he was going to create the whole Protestant church movement because people could finally read the Bible, and had no clue that this was going to happen. But without Gutenberg and the printing press, none of this could have occurred. And you look at what's happened. My mother and dad were both born before 1900, just before 1900. I've sat and talked to my mom and dad when they were alive, and Mom especially, who lived to be 97. She remembers the first automobile. She remembers turning the switch on and watching her dad go wow when the lights went on in the farmhouse. She remembers the first commercial airline. She remembers the first radio, for heaven's sakes. She remembers the first telephone. And I thought, my gosh, wow, we'll never experience that again. Well, kids today, unbelievable what they're going to say. Well, it was always that way. Well, no, it wasn't, because I remember the first internet. I remember the first cell phone. I remember all of these things that are just part of today's communication. And advertising is right smack in the middle of this. What an exciting place to be. Best kind of thing you can do with your life.
I like it. Talk to me about some specific people that you've worked with that you felt were just outstandingly talented or gifted in some way that you've worked with over the years that you really think there should be a record of how incredible this particular person was.
It's hard for me to put a finger on outstanding individuals. I was not a member of the broader active advertising community because our business strategy was to stay in business and be like a submarine, bring up the periscope, get a customer, and be quiet about it, move on. And so we weren't involved heavily in the broader advertising community ever in our history here. We're aware of it, but not involved. I would say some of the sharpest, most exciting people I worked with worked for us. I mean, they were just extremely creative people. Very much, however, like the music business. There are people who are very good at the keyboard who don't arrange choral music very well. There's good directors who don't compose very well, etc. A lot of these people were very one-dimensional in terms of extreme talent in one or two areas. Very few come along that are just so broadly talented that you go, wow, I would say the building I'm setting in, the combination of these guys at Access, Todd and Tony, is an example of just an excellent chemistry of how to run an advertising agency, because it's a synergism that occurs, and then somebody has to run the business. Somebody's keep these people together. Somebody's got to keep it exciting, keep the goals out there, set the standards, have the taste. And when that happens, it's generally more than one person. When I go back to my music background, there was a person that seemed to have everything, and I haven't found that person in the advertising business. I remember sitting in a rehearsal room with Robert Shaw, who went on to direct the Atlanta Symphony, and I called my wife that night and I said, I'm out of music. I'm not going to do this. And I said, there's no way I could ever be even 1/10 as talented as Robert Shaw. What he just demonstrated to me in the last hour, I am in the wrong room. I'm sure you've talked to people that have said that about advertising people, but I have not met that person.
Good answer. Let's see, what else? I want to have everyone talk a little bit about the kind of the value of creative people, creativity, advertising to the Roanoke Valley, and how that has, some of the things that Todd mentioned about, centering the square and the star and all that kind of stuff, but maybe even deeper than that, kind of the value of having a strong creative community.
The value of having a strong creative community in the Roanoke Valley, I'll start over. The value of having a strong creative community in the Roanoke Valley is immeasurable, yet it is intangible. It just invades everything. It creates a space where people want to live and work and be here. When you back into many of the things that are now, such as the Roanoke Star, which are now just, that's always been there. No, it hasn't always been there. Somebody creatively put that together. Somebody has creatively put together the ideas that have created all this infrastructure and things that we're just surrounded by. I don't think any community can thrive without a strong creative community. And the strong creative community might just be one or two individuals that then attract 3 or 4 or 5 others, and they kind of hang out together once in a while. It might be your ad federation. It might be a bunch of musicians that get together, but it is the core, I think, of any society. Without that, we just become, and no offense in this statement, but a dull manufacturing area where we go to work and we get our paycheck and we come home. I've worked in the manufacturing area, and that's why I left engineering. I remember sitting outside of General Motors plant in Indiana. I'd worked 5 years there, and I came home to my wife after that day and I said, we're not going to do this the rest of our life. I'm not going to devote my life to making a better voltage regulator for a Chevrolet. I'm just not going to do that. That is not inspiring to me. And the people I was surrounded by were incredibly bright, hardworking people, but not spontaneous or fun or excited, or practically many of them weren't even healthy. They just didn't have a spark. Get into the creative community, get into the music industry, get into the creative advertising industry, get into event productions, get into any of these creative areas where creative people congregate. There's an energy that then radiates out into the community and creates things, and that, I think, is the soul of a community.
Do you think that there's something unique about Roanoke that has fostered that? Or are we kind of, just like every other town our size?
If you ask, is there something unique about Roanoke that has fostered the creativity, I don't really think there is anything unique about the process of what creativity does. There have been some very unique individuals which then flavor that process in a certain way. I don't have the memory or the history to say it was this person that flavored this and flavored that, but I'm sure you've been to New York City, and when you're standing in the middle of this creative energy, you just absorb it, and you go, wow, things are happening here. There's an energy coming through your body. I think anywhere you go, there is an energy that comes through you, and that is the creative energy of that space. There is a creative energy in the Roanoke area. It is a vital creative energy. I think there are other parts of Santa Fe. There's a different feeling in Santa Fe. Florence, Italy, there is a totally different feeling when you're standing in the town square back when I was there and watching Pavarotti perform on a big screen and seeing thousands of teenagers and older people standing there in rapt attention listening to opera. You're going, oh, this is different. There's something going on here I got to get my handle on. And when you come to Roanoke, you have to say, there's something going on here. I got to figure out what it is. And I don't think you can define it. I can't define it. Let's put it that way.
Cool. Good answer. Juliet, what am I missing?
I don't know. I think those have been some great answers. Todd, have you heard anything?
Yeah, I
Are you hiding back there, Todd?
am. I've been hiding and eavesdropping.
No, you could.
I mean, I think it's awesome. I thought it was an awesome interview. I think it sounded great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just.
It's no bullshit. It's who I am. So.
Yeah. Do you have any funny stories or anecdotes that have happened to you that are advertising related over the years? And I wouldn't mind for you to talk about your time with the New Virginians and the way that the New Virginians became so popular, and especially if you can kind of migrate it over into some. I know that some of the advertisers used it, but maybe get it so that it wouldn't be alien for us to put it in there. You know.
Sure, that's easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching their Dinah Shore thing the other day.
Oh, really?
It's on YouTube.
It's still out there. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a big day for us.
Yeah, just tell us about your tell us about your association with the New Virginians, who they were, what they did, why it was cool.
All right. Let me think how I can ask the question of myself to answer.
Oh, okay.
Well, a lot of what is known in this area as the Kingma agency comes through a background, kind of an eclectic background of me personally coming out of engineering, deciding I wanted to go into music, being hired at Virginia Tech, where Warren Brandt, the vice president of Virginia Tech, had gone to Purdue, and he calls up the music director at Purdue and he says, we want something at Virginia Tech just like they had at Purdue. Do you know of anybody that could do that? And we can't hire anybody with a music degree. We've got to hire somebody with some kind of an engineering or some kind of a background because we don't have any music program. So my wife's father was working for Al Stewart. I was very active in music up in Indiana, working for General Motors. I get this call out of the blue. I had been reading the book, Think and Grow Rich, think about what you want and you can get it. And this call comes in and this guy says, you know, we got a little school down here in Virginia and we need a glee club and you've been recommended. Would you be at all interested in coming down and working in the glee club? And I said, well, of course. And so I get on a train, take the overnighter, come into Blacksburg. Virginia Tech had 6,400 students at that time. 100 of them were women. They were all living in one dorm. It was a military school, and they offered me a job. And the premise was I was to teach math half-time and to restart the glee club half-time. Well, we took the job, and it was scary because we left a good job with General Motors. And we came here just on fire that I was going to change my background from engineering to music with no training in music. And that's when I met Robert Shaw and almost got blasted out of the water. I thought, what am I doing? And so we started the glee club. It became very successful, mainly because I'm a marketer. I learned somewhere along the line, somebody told me, and I've never forgotten this poem, he who whispers down a well about the things he has to sell will never make as many dollars as he who climbs a tree and hollers. And I thought, I can do that. I can just brag about what we're doing and get posters out and all this sort of thing. Well, within 2 years, I was head of the choral music and full-time in music, and then we started the New Virginians in the early 70s, which was a traveling show troupe. At that time, college groups were all mostly very formal in robes, and we started dancing and singing. We were one of the first show choirs in the country. And we promoted it. We really promoted it, and it became very good. I was the director, but what I was doing was coordinating really skilled people, Kit Bond on technical and all the people that were just so good. And it became a sensation. We were on the Dinah Shore show. We did a coast-to-coast tour sponsored by Georgia Pacific. And in the height of all of this, I quit because the school was really not wanting to go where I thought the program needed to go. And that's when I went to Wheaton Industries, changed careers again, got back into manufacturing, and did not like that, which resulted in me starting the Kingma agency. But the New Virginians years were the years where I was not only doing the ad agency work for the New Virginians, but was learning how to do that. And so I think that was significant to what happened here. I was also around a lot of good clients, we sang for the National Chamber of Commerce, we sang for the Governors Association of the United States out in Williamsburg, and I got to interface with some excellent clients and develop the contracts and deal with them professionally. So I think I picked up some taste along the way of how these people think and act, and that's been extremely helpful. So that's kind of how the New Virginians ties back into the whole thing here. And frankly, we moved back to this area because people knew me, and I figured, well, if I'm going to start a business, it would be a lot nicer if I could walk into somebody's office and they'd say, oh, you're Stan Kingma, I know you. And so that has helped me a great deal.
What's the funniest thing that ever happened to you in
In advertising?
Yeah.
Funny as in ha-ha, or funny?
Well, you can interpret however you wish. Dang, it's your show. We're just listening.
Well, funny doesn't, what's the funniest thing that has happened to me in advertising? Well, the thing I got the biggest laugh out of was I was doing a lot of, we were doing a catalog and a lot of photography for the Carl Lowry Glass Company in Baltimore, Maryland, based on my relationship with the glass industry from New Jersey. And I thought I had that client in the bag. I mean, we had worked with them for years. So they said, hey, we're going to have a little review. We'd like you to bring some ideas up here. And so it's going to be, put together the ideas for this new promotional campaign. So me and an assistant drove up there. And being the clever guy I am, I thought, I know these guys so well, I'm just going to be off the cuff. And I went up, and I had taken a big roll of brown wrapping paper. Had all my artists and everything. We'd put all of our ideas, and I just unrolled the wrapping paper in the presentation. And, oh, it was so casual. I'm having a good time. And when I got there, the people leaving the room were from Paris, France, the biggest advertising agency in France, with their projectors, with their suits and ties, with the models, and they were cleaning up the conference room, and we walked in with a roll of craft paper. Needless to say, they got the business. That was, I don't know whether that was funny or just something we've laughed about and said, wow, did we screw that one up big time.
Good story.
Definitely felt that feeling before.
Have you ever done that, Todd, where you just are so blown out of the water, you go, my God, did I miss this one?
I've had a few experiences. I had one where I had gotten into a client. She wanted nothing, absolutely nothing to do with me. She'd been pressured into having the meeting, and she spent the meeting being as rude and mean to me as she possibly could. And I thought, wow, I drove 2 hours for this, and there's been a lot of them that I've misread, and you go, if you have enough at-bats, you're going to have a few bad ones,
I had a woman fall asleep in pitch once.
Oh,
Just out cold.
Well, another one that was really funny was down in Atlanta, Georgia, when I was working at Wheaton, and we had, it wasn't the Beanie Babies. What was the one before that? The something Patch Dolls. What was that? Cabbage Patch Dolls. Frank Wheaton got the great idea. He was going to put Cabbage Patch dolls on all of his dinnerware that we were creating. So he sends me down to Atlanta, Georgia to get the rights to get the Cabbage Patch. I get in the plane, get down there, talk to this severely dressed female lawyer, back when female lawyers, a diminutive female lawyer, not a very big woman, and just severe. She spit me out the door. She would have nothing to do with me. Absolute disaster. I came back and I said, Frank, I failed. I cannot get it for you. He said, no, we're going to get it. You get it for me. So I sent down my female assistant and I said, just go down there all by yourself. So she gets down there and she immediately gets the thing. She gets the whole thing signed and going. And I said, did anything come up about the meeting with me? He said, yeah, we had a great laugh about that. They said, did your boss tell you about how we chewed him up and spit him out? We figured if you wanted it well enough, they'd send a woman back. And I'm going, oh, okay, lesson learned. Isn't that a great story? Yeah.
There's just so many. Yeah, that's the fun part. I mean, the fun part isn't the newsletter you write. The fun part is when you're looking at these meetings, you never know whether
you do not know what's going to happen.
Could be a home run. Could be the greatest. What's the biggest high you ever got out of a meeting? What's the biggest? Wow, I nailed that.
I think the biggest high I ever got out of the meeting was when I nailed the Verilease account in Scottsdale and came home and told my wife we nailed the account. And I thought, this isn't bad. We like Scottsdale. It's a good chance to go out there. And it was good money, and that was fun. Yeah. But I've got a client that one of the things that I find fascinating, and I can laugh about it now, our clients, I've got one right now, which I'll leave unnamed, who hires you, pays you good money, you come up with all these creative ideas, you lay it on the table, and then they completely redesign it based upon his particular ideas and won't listen to you. Take all the headlines out. What? Take the headlines out. We want more copy. Oh, that'll work. You know.
I saw an old Gomer Pyle the other day that really describes what we do a lot of times, and that is that the Sarge told Gomer to dig a hole here and put the dirt over there, and then he told him to fill the hole back in with the same dirt he took out. You spend all your time doing something and undoing it, and it doesn't mean that that isn't work that should happen, but you don't necessarily see the action. That's why the good ones are so. What did you consider a success? What was a successful client relationship to you? What did you think was?
What is a successful?
Yeah. How a holistic, successful relationship? What makes that? What makes you after you finished a campaign saying, I earned my money and I feel really good about what I did about that? And what's better, they feel really good about what I did that. What are the hallmarks?
Is this on camera? I talked to him? Okay, good. So one of the hallmarks of a really good client relationship can be summed up, I think, in my mind by what I almost called my company. For many, many months, I didn't know what to call the Kingma agency because it's so trite to put your name and then the agency. And so I made up a business card and I called it Hire a Vice President because I had been a vice president of a large company, was head of marketing, and I was regularly brought into all the staff meetings and all the meetings, and then they looked to me and they said, well, what's your input on how we should market? How should we take this to the marketplace? How should we get people to buy it? And so I was pitching people, why don't you hire me as your part-time vice president? Just put me on your staff. When you have a meeting, call me up. I'll come sit in. We'll figure out how we're going to pay for this so that I'm part of your organization and I can be your vice president, and you don't have to pay me what I'm worth if you had me full-time, but you've got my expertise. Plus, I've got a staff of people I can help you with. I've had probably a dozen clients in 30 years that have really treated me that way, where they have said, okay, we're just going to have you come in and we're going to treat you as part of the family. And they do. And when that happens, magic occurs because there's a trust. You know they're not out bidding against you. They're arguing with you. They don't do everything you say, but you're part of the family. And boy, is that an easy way for people to have an effective marketing program. What happens instead in today, you asked earlier, how has everything changed? What's happening today is that instead of doing that, they go to the least expensive solution they can. They either put somebody in marketing that shouldn't be there because they have no training, but yet they've been in the company a long time, and so they promote them into something they're totally useless at, or they hire the very youngest person they can. One lightning strike out of 1,000, that is genius, because some of these youngsters will blow all of us out of the water. But most of the time, they're so inexperienced, they have no work ethic, and they just don't know what they're doing. And marketing suddenly gets a bad name in the company, everything goes downhill, then they call up Access and they say, oh, we're in trouble, we got to get some things going here, nothing's selling. And then they go back to an ad agency. All of this could have been solved if they had come to an Access or a Kingma agency or any other agency and said, we'll make you part of our family. Just come in and sit with us and we'll trust you. Be with us, a trusted employee, and we know you've got the experience of marketing. How people can come into an established company, such as the one I'm sitting in, or come into my office and look at the hundreds of campaigns up on the walls that we've successfully done and question whether maybe we could do another campaign or not, I just don't get.
Good answer. I'm with you.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
I mean,
you've done great.
I mean, go to your website and you look at page after page of successful campaigns, and I'm sure clients come to you wondering if you're the right agency. Go, give me a break.
Oh, all the time.
What else can I do? You know?
I spent lunch on just a similar thing, and just I mean, and that is the most frustrating part is when you have. Did you ever have a really good idea you just couldn't sell? One that you just loved and you just couldn't talk to?
I've had a bunch of them, yeah, and I think they're great, and you just can't get them across, and it would work so well, and you're so sure it would work well, and the person yawns and goes, no, that's not for us. We don't want to do that, or that's too much money. You know, we can spend 20,000, but not 22. You go, what? Yeah. We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of times, I always have to catch myself. My father was a really tight negotiator. That was his thing. People were scared when he would walk onto a car lot. They didn't want anything
Oh,
to
really?
do with him. But I always have to watch because that's part of my heritage. Is don't negotiate too tight. It's usually a good decision or a bad decision. $2,000 in the middle won't make any difference in 6 months. You know, don't lose an employee because they want $2,500 more a year than you really want to pay them. Don't lose an account because they want to pay $500 less than you want to on this printing job. You know, figure out a way to make it work, and don't get all wrapped up in it.
But see, those are business decisions, and you've seen them, I've seen them. The agencies come and go, and freelancers come and go, and generally it has nothing to do with their creative talent. It has to do with their lifestyle. They get messed up in alcohol or drugs or illicit sex or whatever they do, or they try to start an agency and they just don't have the capacity to energize people. You know, get people on a team, get them done, get out of the way. You know. I'll bet that the majority of things that come out of this door may pass by you or Tony, and not all of them. In my case, the majority of the things come out, I look at it and I say, that is super. I would never have thought of that. Thank you. That is just perfect. You know, I wished I'd thought of that kind of thing. Do you see that a lot? I mean, in your world here?
We do. Tony and I are still real involved in the creative, but we have some incredible people that just, it's just, wow. You know, I still think the most valuable thing in marketing is the ability to come up with, to look at a blank piece of paper and
Yes.
say, I've got an idea that can fill that blank piece of paper. All the technical things, all the figuring out how to do the code and how to make this look good and how to make this look pretty and whatever. It's all well and good and it's all important and it's vital. But when you look at that, the ability to concept is just
Well, and I think, a subset of what I talked about earlier, which is the change that's going on with our technology, is that we are focusing students so heavily now on the computer and Photoshop and InDesign and all of the intricacies of this, that when they get that, they may not have the gift to use that. And so they feel like they're a designer, and their portfolio is terrible because they have no creative skills other than the implementation of this thing. It's like getting a typewriter back when there weren't computers and learning how to type and saying, well, now I am an author. My favorite story in this line is back in my music heritage, and it's a true story where so many young people get a degree in opera at Indiana University. There's probably 25 good jobs in opera in this country, 50 in the world, and hundreds of people are getting degrees in opera to go sing on stages. And many of them, frankly, should just be told, you need to go to Broadway or you need to be something else. But the gift that the Lord gave you is not sufficient for you to get a job. It just probably isn't going to happen. You can't do that because you don't want to discourage anybody. But those of us in the business can listen and say, okay. But a student came out to Mozart, and if you know the story of Mozart, he absolutely was a genius. He was as a child, he was composing symphonies when that meant you had to understand music notation, have it in your head, write it down, know what the instrument sounded like, hand it to people when it worked. And when he was at the budding prominence in his career, a young student came up, like a young intern, and said, I want to do exactly with my life what you did with your life. What's your advice? And Mozart said, go to this music school, study with this person, learn your theory, learn the keyboard, learn these things. And the student said to him, but sir, you didn't do that. And Mozart said, yes, but I didn't have to ask the question. That's creativity. I've talked way too long. I hope you turned that thing off a long time ago.
Awesome.